Test one, two. What's going on, everybody? All right, so hopefully your everybody's doing well here on a Wednesday afternoon. What do y'all do on Wednesday afternoon? Do y'all go to church? What do you do on Wednesday evening? Sorry, not Wednesday afternoon, but Wednesday evening. I totally respect the fact that you guys are working hard and trying to lead your family, and if that's what you have, if you have a family, those of you who are doing what's important to you and what matters to you. And so hey, listen, I have been out and about on vacation, trying to get some R&R time with my family. So hey, stop by and say hi. Those of you who are watching on Facebook or watching on YouTube, yeah. So I pray prayerfully you're doing well, man. So there's a lot going on right now, and man, I have had a lot of time to engage in reflection. And what does that mean to you? Well, it means a whole lot to me because of the current circumstance that our world is in, right? Our world is in a change. And I think many people have said, from the very beginning of the COVID crisis, and of course, we're not talking about COVID, but I think people sensed a shift in change, not only because people went from working in at your office location, and then people started working at home, and then people saying, they call it the Great Resignation. People were leaving corporate America and deciding to work for themselves. So that began a shift. But are y'all paying attention to what's happening in the news around the world? There's a lot of things I cannot say because of what I do. But I will say this, things are changing and things are happening at a rapid rate. And I think 2024 is going to be a world storm, a hailstorm of epic proportion. And you could just, if you've watched what's happening around the world, you're seeing things kind of climax and build up. And although I'm concerned, but I'm not afraid. Okay, there's a difference. But you have to be paying attention. And I would say, as a clarion call to pastors, to church leaders, to ministers, to professors of ethics and religion, influencers, people who care about our world. This is the time for you to find your calling and resonate. Find your calling, find your message, and begin to speak on that. This is the time for you to do that. This is a time for you to, if you are a content creator, this is a time for you to create content with purpose, to be intentional about how you come across the content you create, to be thoughtful about what you create, this is a time for you to do that. So once again, I want to say hello out there. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lionel. For those of you who do know me, hello. So good to be back in the saddle of doing live streams. Excited about that. Please feel free to make a comment below if what I'm saying resonates with you at all. Now, I want to say this as well, because it's, I've had time to think through, and while I'm talking, please feel free to come through. No worries. But I've really had time to think through the importance of value systems, core beliefs, why I believe the way I believe. Why is it important that I espouse those beliefs, talk about them, and explain them? Not only for me showing up on live stream, because a lot of y'all know, those of you know me, you know that I have years and experience as a spiritual leader and a pastoral leader in a congregational setting. I also enjoy teaching as well. I've always enjoyed that. For those of you who know me way back from Tarrant County College days, shout out to all of you. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy sharing the information that I glean, that I learn, with those who are willing to hear. And I've always been about values. Particularly, I've always been about how a person shows up in the world as their authentic self and how that person influences other people. I've always been about that. That's always been very, very important to me, right? Being able to show up in the world and make an impact on people in a way that is world changing, meaning that taking a circumstance, a situation, a core value or belief system, implement that in a situation, and making that environment, group of people, community, neighborhood, ideals, making things better. I've always been about that. So when I talk about this issue of value systems, I'm always thinking about what are those values. And so for me, the value systems are fairness for other people, sort of egalitarian sort of society, right? An altruistic society where people are treated fairly. I believe in the collective humanity of all people. And I believe in justice, right? Treating people the way that you want to be treated or the way they should be treated. So these things are vitally important. Martin King said something that's profound years ago. Martin King said, if a person hasn't found something worth dying for, that person isn't worth living. And I've thought about that. That has been one of my personal mantras, the things that I live by, right? So these values of altruism, justice, fairness, these are core values for me. And Martin King summed it up with the phrase, if a person hasn't found something worth dying for, that person isn't worth living. And as an example, right? He gave himself, put himself on the line. And I'm not talking about other people. I'm talking specifically about Martin King as an example, just to give you a historical understanding or historical person to think about. Because this is the kind of this kind of information that I'm sharing with you is vital for us to understand our calling, our purpose, our stance in life. So Martin King was speaking this during a time of extreme racial segregation in the United States, on the heels of apartheid movements, or with being informed by what was happening in India with colonialism, right? So there were a lot of things happening. The Vietnam War, he spoke out against that, or spoke about that, and so did so many other people. I mean, this was during an era when JFK was killed, his brother was killed. I mean, it was during the 60s period. It was a lot of cultural turmoil. And then with that backdrop, Martin King said, if a person hasn't found something worth dying for, that person isn't worth to live. So if you think about what the implications of that is, what drove him to that? Well, it was his core values. He gave the great speech, and he talked about his daughter, Yolanda, who wanted to go to a theme park, but he couldn't take her to the theme park because of racial segregation. And then he had to explain that to his daughter, who didn't quite understand, right? As a young girl, a young lady, a young girl couldn't understand the whole concept of segregation. He had to explain that to his daughter. But he was willing to put himself in those environments, having his home bombed, being a young man who earned his doctorate degree at an early age, could have went and taught at any university and been very successful as a professor and pastor, and probably even a public figure, in politics, if he wanted to do that. Chose to be a civil rights leader, right? And I don't even think it was really his choice as much as it was the times that he lived in really pushed him in that direction, him and so many others. There were other people involved, absolutely, but I'm not talking about all those other people. What I'm saying is that it was his value system, his system of seeing that people should have a living wage, right? That people should be treated based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin, right? This is what I'm talking about, right? This is the example that he showed, that he demonstrated, that ultimately caused him to lose his life in Memphis while he was there planning the Poor People's Campaign. He lost his life. So his value systems drove him to the point where people violently took his life because of what he was attempting to do by living out his core values. So he literally preached, became fearless because of his core values, knowing that what he was doing was the right thing to do. And it ultimately caused him to lose his life. This is what core values can do for you. And if I want to make that a spiritual, and here's why it's important religiously to me. Even if you're on the wisdom app and you're listening, you're not a religious person, doesn't matter. What core values do you have? We need to really be, if you are a person who believes in the world being a good place, not only for yourself, but for the generations to come, this is the time when you can't be silent. This is not the time for you to be silent. This is a time for you to find your calling and then fully participate in that calling in the world. But what roots you? What girds you? What undergirds your calling? What situates your activity and behavior? What are the moral groundings that situate your movement in the world and your participation in making the world a better place. So when I talk about value systems, this is what I'm talking about. Jesus talked about this in Matthew 5. This was Jesus' great Sermon on the Mount. The same principle applied, that Jesus lived in Israel, in Jerusalem, in this great city, right? It's so interesting to talk about this, y'all. So interesting. During the Roman occupation. Oh man, I hope I don't get in trouble by saying this. But I'm not lying. Scholars and people who study scripture, you know this. This is true. So Jesus lived during an age of Roman occupation. And the conversations that Jesus talked about, feel free to make a comment. I'll reply to your comment in live if you're on Facebook or YouTube. I don't think I'm on Twitter or X. But yeah, I'll reply to it and hear your thoughts. I love to hear your thoughts. But think about this. Just follow my train of thought if you listen intently. This is I'm going to do my best to make sense of this. And I really want to hear back from you. Even if you just leave a comment, whatever, I'll engage. But Jesus, people were under occupation from the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire controlled the export and the import of goods. They controlled the religious, the governmental sort of foreign governmental structures that surrounded how the religious institution in Jerusalem functioned. They were taxing people. And so there was taxation without representation that obviously affected the Jewish community and those who practice Judaism. So there was a lot of very similar things that we see in the news today, almost like history is just repeating itself. And so when Jesus came along in Matthew 5 saying things like, if a Roman soldier asks you to take his pack or his pack 1 mile, take it 2. If somebody slaps you on one side of the cheek, offer the other one also. These were statements that were spoken by a Jewish man, a Galilean preacher of righteousness, right? The Messiah, which is a title, not a name. Christ is a title, not a name. His name wasn't Jesus Christ, right? He was a Messiah, and like many other messiahs that had shown up during the Roman occupation, thinking about being occupied for many, many years. There were many people who came along who were saying, I am showing up in this environment as a Messiah because I'm going to help deliver my people from Roman occupation. This is what was happening then, y'all. See the similarities? History is repeating itself. So when Jesus said and acted the way he did, he was not only problematic for the Roman foreign empire that was invading Israel or, Palestine. Oh, man. Right? Jesus, help me. But Jesus also had to deal with the religious leaders who had vested interests with the Roman Empire to keep that occupation going. Right? So there were people who were leaders within that community who had backhand doors with the Roman leadership to keep that occupation going, but not without struggle for sure. And so when Jesus criticized, some historians say some of his movements criticized the Roman Empire, but most of it, Jesus was a proponent that the reason why we are in occupation is because we had sinned against Yahweh. And that my goal is to bring the people back to Yahweh. That was the clarion call that people within his ethnic group, if you will, they view ethnicity different than what we do today. It was more tribal back then, and not racial based on color of your skin. But Jesus caused a problem for the religious leaders because he called them out. He caused a problem for the Roman. Remember, Pontius Pilate brought Jesus up for trial. And Jesus told him at one point, you have no power if it had not been given to you from my Father above. In other words, Jesus's ethical values and belief system drove his behavior. Dr. King's value system, ethical belief drove his behavior. And what they did had a broad social impact. What Dr. King did had an impact on the entire world. Hence the development of the Civil Rights Movement, hence the Voting Rights Act, right? Hence desegregation, right? This is why values are important. What Jesus did inspires revolutionaries all over the world. It was Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a pacifist. He was a German theologian who, even though he was a pacifist, his ethical values and his beliefs drove him to fight against Nazism. He was a Christian. Think of the church that he was a part of called the movement was called the Confessing Church in Germany. So these are the broader social impacts. When you have values, belief systems that will drive your behavior. So what does that mean for you? What values do you have? Right? What are the, if you're a content creator, what are the values that you promote with your content? If you're a pastor, what values are your sermons promoting? How are you empowering your congregation to participate in the issues that are affecting the real lives of people every day? If you are a creator at all, or if you are in need of inspiration, how are you going to inspire people with your work? How are you living out your value system? How's your shared values? How are they embodied? And how will they impact others? If you're listening on Wisdom, or if you want to make a comment, feel free to hit that button and come through and share your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. This is what we need to think about. We need to think about how we show up in the world and what are the value systems that undergird who we are and what we do and how we respond to the world. And you may say in a sense, or you may think in a sense, well, I have to worry about bills. And this is the problem with believing that people like Gandhi or King or Sojourner Truth or some of the patriarchs and matriarchs who've made any impact in our world, we have the tendency to think that they didn't have daily life to deal with, that they were without responsibilities. And the truth of the matter is, everyone has responsibilities. Everybody has bills to pay, mouths to feed, right? People to care for. You want to be loved. You want to give love and experience love. You want to be happy. All of that is true. None of that changes. But the greatest human life experience is being able to give back to the world we live in. And giving back means that you find time amid your responsibilities and me amid my responsibilities to open our eyes up to the broader society around us and to engage within that society in a way that makes the world better, that makes your community better. And what does that mean for you? And it's easy. It's very easy for us to feel and act as though the world just happens to be good and good things are just going to happen because of we can sit down, meditate, and manifest. No. Yeah, you can manifest good. One of the questions I always ask about the manifesting crew, and I'm all about that. I'm about positive affirmations for sure. I have no bad bones about that. I believe in that for sure. But when was the last time you meditated to manifest justice in the world? Equality, altruism, fairness, providing food for the hungry, clothes for those who are naked, shelter for those who are homeless, right? See, this is another example of what I mean of how we can become so self-absorbed because we live in America, a very individualistic society. And I know I can sound a bit preachy, and that's really not my angle as much as it is to have a conversation and to get you as the listener and those watching, my audience, people who watch me. There are people who watch me over and over again. There are people who go to my podcast, Words for Change podcast, right? There are people who consume my content. What is this? What am I? Oh, that's the podcast. That's the web page. Even though I'm not trying to do that right now, but it's there. But as you can see, I put out a podcast today about, on value systems, collective value systems, right? So go to chapstalk.org and you can see that there, right? But how are we showing up in the world in a way that we're contributing to the good of how the future of the world goes forward? John F. Kennedy said, evil persists when good people do nothing. Evil persists in the world when good people do nothing. And that's what I'm getting at. We can't just live in the world and not participate in making the world a better place. And that's what I'm interested in. Okay? So I want to invite you to, number one, engage. Engage with what's happening in the world. Find your calling. Find your place. Find your space. Find your voice and contribute to the world. Contribute to the conversation. I would say you could join our group, next Words for Change podcast page on Facebook, where we can have these conversations. Some of my live streams are in that private group only. I would love to have you engaged that. If you're watching or you're a fan of the content and you follow me on Facebook, join the YouTube page. Go look at the conversations and the interviews that I have with other people around these topics. I had a great conversation with Laura Hartley. You guys got to go check that video out on YouTube. It's Words for Change, Reverend Lionel Bailey, Words for Change podcast on YouTube. That's another way you can engage, right? You can engage with that platform. You can go to Sojourners. Sojourners is I don't want to say social justice movement. I don't want to say that. But it is a group of information that takes the biblical scripture and speaks from that as they address topics that are happening in the world around Christian social ethics. Okay. That's that's a resource available for you. You can engage with me. You can engage with Sojourner. You can also engage with some of the other. Go check out the post. The conversation I had on YouTube with Laura Hartley, and I put her information if you're interested in being a community changer or helping out with justice projects. Sure, there are many things you can engage in that I want to encourage you to contribute, even in your local community. Excuse me, you can contribute. Okay. So, absolutely. So, wisdom, thank you guys for listening. YouTube, make a comment below because I want to hear from you. If you're watching this later on Facebook, please make a comment. I want to hear from you. Is this encouraging you? Is there something you can learn? You should be watching the news, right? Don't live in a bubble. Engage with what's happening in the world today, okay? So I want to thank y'all for engaging me on this Wednesday evening. I appreciate you. I appreciate you listening. I'm going to stay on the Wisdom app for probably another 5 or 6 minutes. But as far as in the live stream, I'm going to check out at this point. And thank you guys so much for participating. Look for new interviews coming out very, very soon. Keep following our page. Keep following me here on Facebook, on LinkedIn even still. But primarily my audiences is on Facebook and YouTube. And go check out the podcast episode released today. If you I would encourage you to grab a pen and paper if you got some free time to just sit down and think. Information should be very, very beneficial to you as you think about what is God calling you to do and how is God calling you to show up in the world. So, hey, I want to thank you guys so much once again. Be blessed. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord cause his wonderful face to shine on you. May you experience peace in this life and in the age to come. My prayers out to Bishop Carlton Pearson. We love you, man. If anybody watches this from who's close to him, our prayers go out with him. May the Lord be with you, good sir. May the Lord be with you, good sir, as you transition. So, thank y'all for listening. Thank you for watching. Talk to you soon. Peace.